Yay. Thank you.
When we do clerk's items of business, I'll clarify something.
Okay, before we, okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Yep.
Do we have either Miriam or Lori yet? Well, we have a quorum, so I'll go ahead and get started.
That's good.
All right, welcome to the August 18th, 2026 regular meeting of the Lynn Benton Lincoln Education Service District Board of Directors. We'll go ahead and do introductions. If you want to start, Dina, and go around, we'll just go around this way, and then if they pop in, then we'll do them.
Dina Kroll, Board Secretary and Executive Assistant.
Nancy Griffith, an Executive Director of District and Student Services and Assistant Superintendent.
Christina Wonderly, Executive Director of Human Resources.
Brock Ware, Executive Financial Officer.
Amy Vetter, she, her, Board Director, Zone 5.
Jason Hay, Superintendent.
Denise Staffan, Board Director, Zone 4, she, her.
Eddie Symington, Board of Directors, Zone 7.
Michael Thompson, Board of Directors, Zone 3.
Bill Hayes, Board of Directors, Zone 1.
Max Bunker, Director of Network Systems.
Thank
Lori.
Perfect. Once she is up, we'll have her introduce herself. Hi, Lori, can you hear us?
You are muted, Lori.
Unmute it. There. Unmute it.
We were just doing introductions, so we are ready for you.
Lori Greenfield, Board Director, Zone 2.
Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right.
Miriam is in there too.
Yeah. Miriam, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, we just finished that.
Oh, okay. Yes, Miriam Cummins, she, her, yeah, with School Board Director for Zone 6.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then we are on to monthly acknowledgements.
Okay, so you can turn your pages to page 4, and our monthly acknowledgement this month recognizes Women's Equality Day on August 26th, which that seemed like a long time ago when I was writing this, and that's in a week, I guess, the end of August already. Also, it's National Wellness Month, and it's National Back to School Month. So some really excellent things to be thinking about.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment, Dina? Okay. All right, and then Jason had a quick clarification of the consent agenda.
Just before you approve the consent agenda, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. First of all, you will, if you hadn't had a chance to see this, I did send an email earlier this afternoon. Lori had asked some questions prior board meeting and also pointed out a couple of things in there, and I'll just make sure that I hit on these in the right spot in the agenda. But on page 21 of your board packet under sick time, there's just a misspelling. Not something of substance in terms of the policy, but we will correct that when we upload it to the website after the consent agenda is passed. And then the other one that I want to point out is on page 30. Page 30, there was some thoughts and questions regarding at the last meeting regarding mandatory reporting in the policy about board members' authority and responsibilities, of making sure that we were clear about where annual training regarding child abuse reporting would show up. And I know that there were some different comments about that, and making sure that we are clear about what it is, but also that we don't pigeonhole ourselves into just one training platform where all of a sudden the policy is out of date. So what's in yellow is what I'm proposing. And if that language seems fine, then you can just approve it in consent agenda. If you want to have some conversation about it, my recommendation is to approve the consent agenda without this policy. And then let's have a quick discussion about this policy and then approve it separately. But I just use the words online training platform so we don't box ourselves into what it is. Right now, it's called Safe Schools. It's been Safe Schools for a long time. However, we know names change, and sometimes what it is technology companies buy other technology companies and then the name changes. So anyway, that was with that policy. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if we do change it to online tools, does that mean if the opportunity for in-person is offered, we can't do it then?
Good question.
No, that's a good question. I think we still can do in person. I mean, we can do something more than this policy, certainly. This doesn't box us into just online. We could add some language that says something like board members are offered annual training on child abuse reporting via online training platform and or in-person training.
Yeah, I think that would work because like you said, I don't want us to get boxed in by
Yeah.
language. And right now, as it only reads via online training platform. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that if this is something, if we have the opportunity for in person, we should be able to take that up.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Can-
So what
can
I have,
make a comment on that?
Yes.
I totally agree with what Miriam is saying because some people may have some quality training that they're required to do in their work or other settings. But how do we determine what would be a training? I know Safe Schools has been like this kind of baseline benchmark for education. So, I mean, I would hate to, again, box us more into some specific kind of training, but just being aware of how do we know whether somebody's really trained if it's not that platform?
what I would say to that is that whatever training that we are using, that we should be consistent to that. So this is precisely the reason why we've stuck with Safe Schools, even though it's not always the funnest way to do the training or anything, and certainly doesn't take anything away from there can be some great in-person trainings. And what I would say, my recommendation to the board would be if we did an in-person training at some point where we had somebody come and do the in-person training with the board and we knew that every board member was there and it was in the minutes that every board member was there, then we can check the box and say, yep, we're covered legally. If we missed a board member or something, then that board member would have to probably do the Safe Schools training. Or we just do Safe Schools. We just need to make sure that we do complete the training in order for us to be in line with policy.
Who decides what qualifies as an adequate training?
In terms of the liability part of it, it's basically PACE, our insurance cooperative, which is why for the most part, when it comes to these requirements, we stick with the training that's provided in Safe Schools.
Okay.
Because we know that if we do that, they will cover us. So that's the kind of the main reason why Safe Schools goes there. Yeah.
So regardless of what we do, we just have to run it by PACE to make sure that it's PACE approved
Yes.
so that we
Yeah,
have our liability covered.
exactly. Yeah.
That gives us that opening to have a variety there.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I have here, and I'll read this, and then if you pass the consent agenda with this in it, this would go in. But it says board members are offered annual training on child abuse reporting via an online training platform and or in-person training. Training access is provided through the Human Resources Program. Does that sound good to
Yeah.
everybody? Okay.
Great.
That's great. That's all I had for on the consent agenda. So now you can go ahead and seek a motion for that.
All right. Is there any conversation, questions, comments on the consent agenda besides the ones we've already brought up?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second it.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. All right. The consent agenda has been unanimously approved. Okay, so moving on, board director reports. Does anyone have anything they would like to share? Yes, Bill.
Since we last met, I've had the privilege of connecting our security team for cybersecurity training with another board I'm on, a nonprofit, and they're really happy to finally get some guidance. And it was good to see Tim and his team at work. So I got to see it from another side of LVL's work. So I was grateful for that.
That's fantastic.
Really great. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Miriam, Lori, did either of you have anything?
Nope.
Okay.
So I
Yes,
actually
Denise?
do. Yeah. So I know typically in terms of our reports that it's based on maybe something that we attended out in the community. However, I wanted to share just some reflections that I've had over the past couple of weeks since we met. And this came up in the new board member event that I had mentioned that I attended, and it was around board evaluation and reflection. And so the past couple of weeks, I was thinking too about the activity that we engaged in deciding on how we will appoint our next chair, vice chair, things like that. And there was a comment made, and I think that it is an area of concern that we should think about, and it is around equity. How do we ensure that all board members get an opportunity around leadership, that all voices are heard? And so that really made me reflect on, as board members, what are our responsibilities in terms of accountability, as well as really evaluating ourselves. We evaluate our superintendent, but I am hoping that at some point that we'll have an opportunity to really talk about ourselves as board member and how we are ensuring that we are listening to all voices and that we're making sure too that leadership opportunities are provided to everyone who so desires those opportunities. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, I will go ahead and move on. So more policies.
Yes. So we're in the thick of policies here. However, as we get through, this is how these things go. As we get through all of these policies, we might have a break for a month or so until OSBA sends out another policy update, and then we'll, don't worry, we'll, be back into the policies again. I am going to go through these as efficiently as I can, but please stop me if you have questions. And as we look at things here, some of them are going to be fairly quick, I think. And then I will say there are a couple of these that are definitely more meaty that we're going to have to take some time with and everything. So starting out on pages 43, well, first of all, I won't get into this, but on page 43, there's some language about what House bills and where these changes came from in terms of why OSBA is sending out policy updates to say, hey, these policies need to be updated, and it's based on that legislation that we've had. And so as we get into the first one, starting on page 44, this is around qualifications and duties of the superintendent. It's really not much of a change to this policy except on page 3. you will see under objective 3, there is some new language here that says support the board with scheduling meeting places, providing for required notices, and ensuring any recordings or minutes are created for all board meetings and all committees authorized by the board as appropriate. This is not something that is any change of practice for us. We already do it. However, it's one of those things that came out of legislation to make sure there's clarity around how we are following public meetings law. So, and having the consistency that ultimately that is my responsibility as your superintendent. Any questions around that one? Okay. Right, I will go to the next one. Let's see. Any papers? Okay, so next up, and actually, yes, next up is on page 48, and this is around evaluation of the superintendent. This is actually a policy that is not required. However, it is one that OSBA recommends, and it's something that came through in this update. And I really thought, there's no reason why we don't have this policy. You already have a procedure to evaluate me, and there's very good reason to codify it. And so I'm submitting it to you as a draft at this point. You will see in the first paragraph that there is some brackets in here, and I left some brackets in some of these. Sometimes I just clean things up before you see them. But in this case, I left the brackets in. It's optional to say at least once per year. That's what we're currently doing. So my suggestion is that you just leave it in like that, and we'll just remove the brackets to finalize it. This was another question that Lori brought up, and I did reply in my email. She just had the question, can you remind us if your contract includes an evaluation provision? And I said, yes, there is a small amount of language in my evaluation, about evaluation in my contract. And it just says, on or before June 30th of each year, the superintendent and board shall meet to establish ESD goals and objectives for the superintendent for the following fiscal year through the annual performance review process. Such goals and objectives shall be reduced to writing and be among the criteria for which the superintendent is evaluated. A performance review of the prior year will occur annually on or before June 30th. So that's the only thing that's in my contract about that. But it does fit with this policy here. So I'll just pause and see. This is OSBA language. I didn't write any of this, but it's all green because we don't have this one yet.
Do you know why, I guess why it wasn't included before and why they're recommending?
There are a variety of policies that are not required, and it's only if statute requires them. And that for whatever reason in the past, our board and or superintendent did not have a discussion about it. And we do have a tracking document that shows which policies we have adopted and which ones that might have been passed on at one point. And this is one that in my time as superintendent just has never hit my radar screen. And it's been many, many years ago. It was actually prior to my predecessor. So Tanya, it never hit her radar screen as putting something up, but the superintendent before, I guess, made a note to not bring it forward, that it wasn't required, and so just decided not to do that. There are some policies that are not required that we have notes about that with, and because it takes so much time to stay caught up on the ones that we already have. We've kind of focused on that. However, I've made it my practice in the past 3 years that anytime a policy update comes up, that if there is something that is recommended but not required, I'm bringing it to you guys. Just because I'm thinking I don't want to make the call, especially something about evaluation of the superintendent. that's your duty to do. And I don't want to say like, oh, well, no, we're not going to have that policy. That seems like a real conflict of interest in this case.
So why did
Questions?
so why did this policy is recommended now by OSBA? What brought that up forward?
My understanding is that it has always been recommended but not required, but that it's probably just in their review process that they regularly review the policy library and they put things in the update for boards to look at. And so in this case, it ended up in the policy update document.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I have to set these papers aside. Moving on. The next one is a policy deletion, and this is providing space, other facilities or services. This is one that, and Lori asked a good question about this. Why are we deleting this policy, and how does this affect the potential shared use of Letitia Carson site, or does it? And really, this policy is one that OSBA said to delete because the supporting OAR has been repealed. And so it's not a policy that's backed up by statute any longer. And so they just recommended just getting rid of it. I don't think there isn't anything in here that impacts our ability to function at Letitia Carson. So I think it's fine to delete it. Any questions about that?
Is there another, like,
There isn't a,
that covers?
no, there isn't anything that comes in its place. Now, I would not be surprised, because this is how it goes, that in the full session, that somebody discovers that, hey, we did this, and now it created this hole, and then there's new legislation that tries to fill the hole back in, so
That makes sense.
it's possible it'll come back around to us. Okay, the next one is a policy that we already have, and really this is about integrated pest management. Exciting stuff for education entities to talk about pests, but it is important in terms of thinking about the health and safety of our spaces for our students and staff and everything. And so this one is on pages 50 through 52, and you can see that there's just a couple of things that they added in with the most recent legislation. So, and these are, again, already things. So if you look at the first one, the IPM plan and list shall be available to the public through the ESD's website. It's actually something we already do. So there's some of these things that we're doing already, because you used to have to send it out, and it was a very paper driven thing. And we're like, well, we're not sending papers out to people. So we've been putting it on our website for quite some time. So that's something that is just a clarification. Then you can see there's something that was added in on page 2 of the policy, which is on page 51 of your packet. The pest condition that prompted the application in terms of record keeping and the description of the area where it was applied. So instead of just saying the location where the thing, but actually having a description. And then at the end, it says at least once every 5 years, the board shall review the IPM plan, make any necessary updates, and readopt the IPM plan. So this is something that you will see us come back to you with, because this has just been something we've taken care of in management and has never come to the board before. And so by having this updated language, you will get to review our IPM plan at some point here.
So Jason?
Yeah.
Just for information, who does the 6-hour training?
In terms of which page are you
It's
on?
on page 51.12, shall designate facilities administration as the IPM plan coordinator, and under that one, number 1, attend no less than 6 hours of IPM training.
So our person for that is Lisa McConnell, our facilities coordinator, but we also have, I believe, our lead facilities person, Matt, has also attended that training. So we always make sure there's some capacity for people keeping up on those trainings. This is something that also covers us. There are pieces of this when we look at us being covered by PACE, our insurance provider, as well, of making sure that we are checking those boxes.
This kind of reminds me of, like when you do those safe schools training, you know, and they talk about chemicals. So is it also updated? Is that information also updated? And
That is a really good question. My guess is not yet, but it's possible that PACE will update, or safe schools will have updated things. They're always usually a year behind, you know.
Okay.
So the biggest thing.
I couldn't hear that because I have to have a fan on because it's hot here.
Oh, okay. I think what I have to make sure I'm doing, and Max reminded me of this before we started the meeting, is if I turn to Denise and talk, it's not into the microphone. So
Well, I
apologies.
couldn't hear Denise's question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I asked if the information is also updated in the safe schools training.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say it probably, well, I'm certain that it is not updated at this time. It very likely might be updated at some point. I think the main thing with IPM is that we have our facilities staff and our facilities coordinator that are trained. And then the biggest, like the real main part of this is making sure we're communicating out if we have any application of something, so that people are aware of where the application was and what that looks like. We have not actually had to worry about application notification in the same way. Well, I mean, we've had notification, but we've worked with contractors that have been on the hook for this, where we've just paid the contractor to do any application, and then they have to do the notification and we put it out there. So this is one of those things where if we actually, Matt is trained now to be able to be an applicator, and it might be something that we'll just have to pick up those extra pieces of the communication if he's doing the application.
Our custodians have specific trainings that they do in safe schools, and I'm looking through here. LBL pesticide herbicide notification is a thing that they
Is
do
one of their
review.
required ones.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for bringing that up. That's actually a good reminder for the board just to know what Christina pointed out is that depending on what your role is in the organization, you have different safe schools things.
True, true.
So like
That
our
makes sense.
facilities people have specific things that everybody else doesn't have to worry
Okay.
about in the same way.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay, if there aren't any other questions there, I'm going to keep going. The next one is student health services. This is on pages 53 through 55. Also, just adds one paragraph. So it's an administrator or other staff who is not a nurse may supervise, evaluate, or direct a school nurse or registered nurse for purposes related to the nurse's role as a school employee, including but not limited to assigning the nurse's work hours, locations, and workload and other matters addressed through a collective bargaining agreement. And this is the key of this that came out of the legislation. An administrator may not direct the school nurse or registered nurse in the practice of nursing. That's part of the nursing boards and everything, which makes total sense. It is, again, just codifying something here. We do have a nurse on staff that's directed by an administrator, exactly how it is laid out here. They do not tell the person how to do nursing, but they can direct their work in terms of, I need you to go here and work with this kid or this thing and that sort of thing. So this is new legislation, but it actually codifies what we're already doing. So it's not really a change for us. So question about that. Okay. All right. So the next one is on page 56. And this is around access to buildings. This is another one that is not required, but recommended. And we've never had it before. And so that's why you can see it's never been adopted and it's all green. I think this is just another thing that is already in practice. I do direct, or the board directs me in terms of management duties and to control access to ESD buildings as appropriate. And then the superintendent or designee will develop procedures to control access to building. That's actually the designee. And so the person that's in charge of this is Lisa McConnell, our facilities coordinator. I work with her. She reports directly to me to make sure that we are taking care of access and that sort of thing. Pretty straightforward.
Is that because of policy KNA that we needed something written to ensure that it came about with access to the building? Is that a correlation?
No, it's not. Totally separate. And it didn't come about that. This is another one where they did a review of policies and it's just one that we didn't have before. And I'm just bringing it to the board to say, makes sense to have.
Okay.
Yep.
thank-
Yeah. Good question.
Yes.
Okay. Next up. So, I will say that, those were the easy ones. I have some other easy ones. Maybe I did what's it called? The sandwich technique, So we have the more challenging ones next. And so what I want to do is just give you a little bit of background. So during the short session, the legislature passed a couple of Senate bills. So Senate bills 1538 and 1594, and House Bill 4079. And then also, really it's connected to the AG's office to develop and publish model policies addressing immigration enforcement in schools. Okay. There's a lot of complexity to this. We got this and the policy in a separate policy update a week before we did this packet. So we sent the packet out last week, so it was the week prior to that. And it took OSBA some time because it's a legal team that comes together, especially policies that have this amount of consequence. And so it took them a little bit of time after the legislative session ended in June to come up with the policy. They got it out to us. And what I did within this is I actually am giving you the entire model that they sent. I did not clean up any of the brackets and everything because I think that it's really important for you as the board to really look through and for us to make sure that we're really clear about bracketed language that might not be required, but I think you, the board, should decide if you want it in or not, and to look at that. And so what I'm thinking is that this is our first reading. We do need to adopt this by the end of September. So we will have to have this adopted by our next board meeting. And my sense is that it's probably really important for us to do a first reading, have some discussion about some of these items. I can take notes. Dina's taking notes. We will make sure that we capture any of the thoughts about this. And then we'll come back in September. And I'm not going to put this, I do not recommend putting this into the consent agenda. I think we should have a second reading on it where we go through it again very carefully and then have the board adopt it at that point. So that's my recommendation. The other recommendation, just as a caveat that I think is an important thing to think about, is I would not recommend at all changing any of the language. I think you should wrestle with what's in brackets of whether to use it or not use it. Or there's a couple things that we, would clarify, like if it says superintendent or designee or something like that, if there's something like that. But I just cannot, under any good conscience, recommend to the board to change any of the language because I'm not an attorney. A group of attorneys wrestled with this for a couple of months to put this together. And I would not want you to be in a position to maybe make a change of words and then go, oh gosh, we didn't really mean that. Anyway, that's my 2 cents about that. So with it, if you look through the first page of this, there is a very big bracket in that first paragraph, and it's most of the paragraph. So if you can see the first part of it around where it says ESD complies with state and federal law, and then it ends with immigration enforcement right before that bracket that has the first word that says absent. That whole bracket doesn't need to be in there, but you can choose to leave it in there. I will tell you, just like I put in my email to you, that the absent a judicial authorized warrant, subpoena, court order, like that is language that has been the recommended language from ODE for this past couple of years, and that's how we've been operating. We have, well, the caveat is we have not had ICE come onto any of our campuses, so we haven't had to actually do any of this. But the guidance that I had put in place from ODE's guidance to our staff is in alignment with what's in the bracket.
Mhm.
And
So-
are you happy with the guidance that ODE gave and that, I mean, obviously you implemented here?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. You know, the main thing is that if a federal ICE agent shows up on campus, that they call the superintendent's office right away. You know, these are challenging situations, and some of our, and it's not to take away the importance or the skill of the leadership in those roles, but those are far more junior leadership roles than mine. And so it makes sense to have somebody from the superintendent's office or the executive team that's there to provide support to one of those coordinators that would be in that spot. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
A couple things. So when we're talking about policy, and there's a lot of, what we call jargon when it comes to words. And so one of the things I think we need to be mindful of is when we do say things like AG, a lot of people who might not know what that stands for, it's important to determine and make sure we say it instead of just saying it. That creates accessibility. Again, AG is Attorney General, but not everybody might know that. And since we are a public entity and we don't know who's watching, I think being mindful of not saying abbreviations if we're not going to say what they stand for. The other part that you said was to adopt this by the end of September. When do students start coming in?
So we will have students in our programs starting right around Labor Day. And most of our schools, some of our districts are starting before Labor Day, but some of them are starting after Labor Day. But in terms of the legislation around this, the requirement is for us to adopt this prior to the end of September.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at this through that lens of our families and how we do need to protect them. And I personally would feel safer in adopting something like this before school starts or before we have students coming in, just to give families that peace of mind that we do have a policy in place that's going to protect them. That is, my recommendation, my opinion, I guess you can say, on something like that. And so if that means in order to make that happen, if we need to have a special meeting, I just feel like it is our duty as the board to ensure that our communities and our families are safe. And personally, seeing what has been happening in Oregon, I feel like schools should be able to implement this before students arrive to their building.
I would defer to the chair and the rest of the board on where you would want to go with that. I just brought forward what OSBA recommended to us, and so the board certainly can decide, and I can take notes, and Dina can take notes, and if that's something, if the board would like to have a separate meeting where we could come together, it could be one of those things like we've done with other things in the past where we have a quick Zoom meeting, for a few minutes where you can come back together and do that. I'm open to whatever the board would like to do with that.
Yeah, so agreed with Director Cummins, but I guess my question is, how far is our current practice, like the spring of this year, how far different is it from this language? I got the sense that we're already pretty much following this.
We are, yeah.
for all
So
intents and
the
purposes.
guidance that that we've been given in the past, and our administrators, and we will have a conversation with them again prior to school starting is pretty much in alignment with this. I mean, there are some differences, and the email I sent to you showed a couple of the differences, but yeah, I don't at all disagree with what Miriam is saying, and in terms of like having families feel comfortable. And I think that, you know, either way, I mean, we can publicly state that we are following the guidance that ODE has provided in the past, which is mostly in alignment with this, if that's what the board would like to do. Or we also can go through and, you know, if the board, for example, in this first paragraph, wants us to keep what's in brackets, I'll just mark out the brackets and we can just go through this and have something that you feel like solid about and adopt it whenever you'd like to adopt it. So yeah, you don't, the board definitely does not need to wait until the next meeting to adopt. You could adopt it tonight if we went through and did it.
Maybe,
About your comfort level with adopting a policy.
maybe we should get into it and then see where we're feeling.
Yeah.
And then at the end of these 3 policies, we can decide whether we're comfortable adopting them tonight.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'm up for whatever works for you.
Yeah, as far as with the brackets where it starts with absent, I personally feel it's important to leave it there. Again, this is my opinion. One, because I would provide context and information about this policy, especially when it comes to explaining what it is, and how important it is, especially when it comes to the authorized, for instance, indicating you need a warrant, subpoena, a court order. I think those are the key words that we need to emphasize. What is it that the federal immigration enforcement looks like and what they need to do in order to come into our building? So I personally, I like that it's there because it gives us the context that we need to be able to uphold and why it's there.
I don't disagree with Director Cummins at all. My only reservation is I know that all of these policies go through a team of attorneys. I am no attorney. I know that the responsibility of policy is on our shoulders as board members, but I also don't know how comfortable I am deciding all this bracketed language. So my only thought around that, I want to always follow the law. That's straight out the gate for me. The other thing is I want us to be doing absolutely everything we can to protect students and families. So I don't, if Jason, you or your team feels comfortable giving a recommendation towards what we keep and what we don't. I know that you just said, here's everything they gave us. I'd like to see your recommendation.
Yeah.
And if that's a call that you're comfortable making, great. Or though it's been through a team of attorneys, I also wouldn't argue if you wanted another set of our own attorneys to look at this and say, based on LBLESD's practices, we do or don't believe this bracketed language should, you know, I want everyone, I want our families, our students to be safe. Absolutely. I just, when it's this serious of a policy, I want to make sure that we are putting in the right language where it needs to be and not putting in language that may corner us.
I absolutely see what you're talking about. So a couple of thoughts, somewhat starting with the final one. I would actually not recommend going to our own in-house counsel to clarify this because first of all, Brian is an excellent attorney, but his focus is not on writing policy. And if you want to see something entertaining, you can always put 2 lawyers together and look at a document and say what should go in and what should not go in. And you're probably it probably won't give you clarity, you know, and everything else. So my recommendation would be not go there, but if we wanted to have additional legal information that we could consult with the OSBA attorney. And so that would be something that we can do. That being said, your interest of protecting students would still be served by this policy, even if you took the brackets out, because that's the way they wrote it. It still follows the new law, and it does that. That being said, I think putting the bracketed section in there gives strength to it, just like what Miriam said, in terms of it gives more information for families there. So my recommendation would be cross the brackets out, leave that in there, and we can keep going through this. If that makes
Yeah,
sense. to
because the lens that I'm looking at through this is I'm looking at it as a parent. If I'm a parent and there's this policy, I want as much information as to why the policy is there. And if I'm someone that is in a vulnerable community, I want to make sure that I'm going to be protected and what that looks like. So that's why I said, I know it's my opinion, but based on that and looking it through that lens, that is why I think it's important to have that context. Yes, it's very wordy, it's long, but I think this is going to give our families a peace of mind when it comes to what that looks like, and we don't have to over explain because it's there.
Yeah. I saw some nods around the room, but I want to make sure. Lori, does that make sense to you? If I'm just kind of looking for consensus and I can
Yes.
keep going.
Thumbs
Okay.
up. Yes.
All right, sounds good. All right, I'm going to keep going. So first paragraph is as is. If you go to the second paragraph, there's a bracketed where it says the ESD will ensure a copy of the Oregon Attorney General's model public policies, and this policy will and accompany administrative regulation provided to staff. That is an easy thing for us to do. I would recommend we just leave that in there.
Yeah.
Okay. If we go on here, there are some parentheses in here that just give a title. They talk about like immigration liaison and alternate immigration liaison. That is not for us to take in or take out, but I did put in superintendent and human resources director for those two roles that are there. If I keep going.
But I do
Okay.
have a question.
Yes.
So, I mean, I understand that in terms of the primary point of contact, but I'm wondering, like on the ground, how does that work? You know, so if I shows up at a building, you know, let's say at an ECSC building or something like that, like who?
It would be the site administrator. So one of our ECSE coordinators
Okay.
would be that person on site. And the protocol that we've put in place so far, that we've been training to in the last couple of years, is that they would ask the office manager to call the superintendent's office immediately. So
Okay.
that while that coordinator is interacting with the ICE agent, I can be on the way. Or a designee could be on the way. That could be Nancy, or that could be any member of the executive team that just gives that backup to the coordinator so that they're not alone.
Okay. Okay. I just
Yep.
wanted to make sure
Yep.
that
That's
was
a great,
clear.
it's a great question.
Yeah.
And more than likely, your example is exactly the example that it would be, because that's where our kids are, you know.
Mhm.
So if it were to happen, that would probably be where it would happen. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm going.
On that real quick, Jason, so does that mean if for instance, let's look at the scenario, if we have an ICE agent come into one of our buildings, will it then be implemented a lockdown procedure? So that way they don't enter the building?
No, that's not part of the protocol. It would be that the coordinator of that building would start interacting with the ICE agent.
What if they're being persistent and they actually want to come in and use force and the police is not there in time?
I mean, this is where, in terms of safety, if they want to use force, it doesn't really matter where there's a lockdown or not. Like if there is a law enforcement agent that's going to use force against our staff, I'm going to tell the staff, like, don't do anything to put yourself in harm.
Exactly.
In that case.
Yeah, but don't we have measures in the building, like for instance, at the ESD, that you can just lock all the doors because you need that access badge?
Certainly, yes. And yet if they're already in the building and if they use force, I don't know. It's hard for me to say. Christina, do you want to?
I just was gonna say, all of our buildings already are hardened in the aspect that the outside doors are locked and it
Mhm.
requires a buzz to
Yeah.
the office. So the officer would have to identify themselves
Yes.
as an officer.
Yeah.
And they can be
if-
seen on
and
camera
they can be
too.
seen on camera.
Yep.
And so I think that there is enough of an understanding in those administrators' minds that they're not just buzzing someone
Yeah.
Okay.
in that situation.
Which
And-
means our office staff could choose to do all of the communication with someone
Without
through the
opening the door.
speaker without opening
Exactly.
the door.
And that's just it. And we've talked about that, is that it's very possible that they wouldn't even be in the building because the door would just remain locked and through the
Mhm.
speaker. And because you'll see as we get into the AR, there's a whole number of things that we need to collect from
Mhm.
any said agent. And so I would anticipate that information could get collected through the speaker or outside, that sort of thing.
And that is something staff gets trained, like at onboarding, or?
We have trained our administrators around this, yes. And certainly with the adoption of this policy, it will bring up a whole bunch more training.
Mhm.
And I'm just waiting to have the policy adopted before we
Okay.
put a training protocol together.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
I have
Yeah.
a question about that, just clarifying. When you say whole other staff, I mean, whoever is sitting at the front desk and working as a front desk person, they know to buzz, to,
Yes.
so it's not like they are going to just automatically open the door. They know that there's a procedure.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
The regular procedure, all of our buildings are locked and it is a purposeful thing to let someone in.
Mhm.
This is just not related to ICE, but just in general, we do have conversations about this because what Christina brought up is the fallibility of anything like that. If people just get into the habit of the door buzzes and they're like, reach over and they don't like interact with somebody, then the locked door did no good. And so, yeah, there needs to be that. And so I know that our ECSE administrators talk with their office managers and, they have a protocol around that as it is. And so we just we'll rely on that. We do the same thing here in this building, is that the front door is locked all the time and we buzz people in
Yeah.
based on the conversation.
Okay, because I'm just thinking about, I know some ICE federal agents, they're wearing tactical police gear, and so they might look like actual police. So that's why I'm wary, because we as society, right, have this thoughts like, oh, here's a police officer, let's let them in. So that's where I want to make sure, like, the training that is there to differentiate the difference between how a federal agent looks when it comes if they're wearing tactical gear versus a police officer, an Albany police officer or a sheriff, and what they'll be wearing, or if asking for identification, what that will look like. So I guess I'm just thinking ahead. I know we need to pass and adopt this policy, but it's something to think about because of that similar appearance when it comes to gear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I just want to add too, so at the OSBA training that I had attended, one of the things came up is that ICE agents, like when they wear masks,
Yes.
what do you do with that? And also that some of them are actually using to give any information about who they are.
Yeah. And that's what this legislation basically is combating against that, to say, if we need to collect information about who someone is, that means we're going to look at a badge, we're going to look at their face, and if they're not willing to show their face and identify them, then we have no idea who they are. Then we would just call our local law enforcement and go from there, is what the protocol that I would tell our staff.
I trust in the training that you give front office staff, but as a former front office staff, or still somewhat front office staff, it worries me for the 24-year-old secretary who sees someone that looks like they're in some kind of official capacity wanting in your building, and how easy it is to just let them in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think the best thing that I tell our office staff all the time is stop and breathe.
Yes.
There is no rush, and I'm not telling you how to train yours, so
Yep.
you'll
I
do
think
that. But
you're right on.
that training, those are the folks I worry about the most, are those people who believe that because they're in some form of uniform that they just need to open the door because they're some form of authority.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that we're giving our people all of the training and all of the encouragement to
Yeah,
handle
absolutely.
that differently.
Yeah, and what we've talked about as an executive team is for us to do training with the administrators. We also have our office staff group that comes together, do training with them, but we also we're going to bring both of those groups together for the period of time to do that training so that we can do that. And everything you said is right on. And it is honestly, that's the part that makes us all nervous, is that it's down to one person that's either going to push the button or not push the button.
Yeah.
And we just have to do the best we can in terms of giving them the tools. Like you say, take a breath, take a pause, pick up the phone, like they can wait outside. It's perfectly fine. Just like they can wait,
Kind of along what Eddie was mentioning, how are we protecting our coordinators, site managers, right, who might themselves be like people of color, immigrants, things like that, right?
That is why we as an executive team have talked about the first thing for them to do is to call the superintendent's office.
Okay.
I think the way that we support and protect them is for one of us to be there and not have them be in that situation alone. Especially when you look at, I think we have some great people that work in these administrative roles, and yet they are very new administrators. A lot of times they're newer. They're in a new administrative role, and it's a totally different deal to be calm in the face of something like that.
Well, I think about, for example, myself as a Black woman, right? And the stereotype being that, Black women are so aggressive, right? And then speaking to an ICE agent who might say, oh, this person is trying to get in our way.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
When, you might be just following procedure, right? You're following policy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
I'm wondering, I know that there's training for people when they are stopped. And I've seen videos of people reading through a checklist of language to use. I'm wondering if there's something similar to that I can't imagine there's not something for front desk office people to have some kind of bulleted points that they go through.
I'm sure there is. I know that I wasn't able to go to the last statewide superintendent meeting. Nancy actually went for me because I had a medical appointment. But this conversation we're having right now is being had in 197 school districts and 18 other ESDs, and it's a big thing that superintendents are talking about right now. And there are places in the state where they are much more likely to have these interventions. And so I am certain we are going to get our hands on some of those good resources. Like that. Some of the Portland area districts and whatnot will probably have resources in place very soon here. And so, yeah, we're going to tap into our connections for things like that. Okay, should I keep going here? Okay. If you look at the second page, there's really nothing on the second page in the first part that's in brackets until you get down to under notice. And they just have that are notice in grade 7 and above. I would just have the recommendation of leaving 7 in there. Again, I don't think this is going to even be something that we have to worry about very much, because the students that we have in grade 7 and above are on a different type of campus, but I think we keep that in there.
Yeah.
If
What-
you
Sorry, was
But-
the 7?
grade 7 and above.
Was that something we put in or they
No,
sent it to us like that?
this is suggested from.
Oh,
a
okay,
meeting.
got it.
Yep.
And then all the parents get notified. It's just the students themselves get notified if they're grade 7 or
Exactly.
above.
If they're 7 or above, then students are also being notified.
Okay.
Was there somebody online who had a question?
Yeah, because I'm just looking at it, since we actually do evaluations for students from K through 12, wouldn't this apply to us if they come into one of our buildings for an assessment? I'm thinking of SIS, Special Education Evaluation Services.
Yeah, it still would apply. I'm merely saying that the likelihood is much lower than, say, ECSE, where there's more of a school environment. But you're absolutely right. It would still apply in that case, Miriam.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because we are considered a public entity, I don't like, I know you're saying it would be less likely, but I can tell you as an immigrant myself and a person of color, it's still that fear. And I can't imagine how that feels for our families. So I just want to be mindful of that we are still considered a public entity. And because of that, there is that possibility.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Yeah.
But Miriam, are you suggesting that we do something other than the 7 as far as notifying students? Isn't that where
Um,
we're at? Or am I
mean,
misunderstanding?
Well, no, I'm just saying, well, I was just trying to understand like the number 7.
Oh,
Like,
that's any, so we are required to communicate with all families, the families, period. But if the student is in grade 7 or above, they also get a notification to let them know that it's going on. So 6th grade and below, we wouldn't be sending a parent square notification, whatever
Yeah.
platform we use.
Or some, like, it would be.
Like preschoolers.
Yeah, it'd be kind of like if we had student, and we don't, but if we were a school district and had student emails, like a school district, students have emails, and in this case, I could see students that are in grade 7 and above being notified via email that this happened, this occurred, versus, a student that's in 5th or 6th grade would not get said email. Yeah.
I just don't understand why we wouldn't send an email to families if there was a presence. Like, for
All
instance,
We do, we will.
All families do get notified, so it's under B, right under that, parents or guardians of students attending any ESD school where the Federal Immigration Authority is confirmed to be on school property for immigration enforcement. So parents regardless get notified. It's just the students themselves getting notified only in 7th grade and above. But all families across the board, all ages, get notified. Does that make sense?
I mean,
It's
it does. And I guess my thinking is, are we saying 7 because that's the more likelihood where students will actually be checking their email?
I think developmentally speaking, that we expect that a 7th grader to be able to understand what's happening more and maybe have some coping skills to be able to deal with that. And they're usually a little bit more independent. They're at middle school at this point, right? Versus when you're in elementary school, you still have one teacher to all these other students. So my guess is it's more so based developmentally, because imagine sending an email out to a 1st grader.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that
Yeah.
correctly, because I thought it was the other way around. And that's why I'm like, wait, something's not matching up. But okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
That's good. So we leave the 7 in there. If you go down to D, there is a part here. It says community-based providers requested to receive notice when a federal immigration authority is confirmed. Community-based service providers can request to receive such notifications by contacting, and it just puts it out as who it is. And if we say the immigration liaison at the ESD office, then they could contact the superintendent's office is basically what that means in this policy. So I would just leave those brackets in there.
Mhm.
Then if you go to the next page, At the top of the next page, there's brackets that say ESDs may include resources available to those impacted by immigration enforcement actions. So this is part of the statement, whether classes or ESD operations were affected by the presence of federal immigration authority. This is where, we could give resources available to people. And it doesn't say that we will, and it doesn't box us into having that or not having that. Thoughts about that statement? Staying in there, or?
So the resources would be educational resources or therapeutic resources? Is
I
that?
would imagine so, yeah. Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess to any community-based type
Legal,
nonprofit,
yeah.
I think of like FACT maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna cross those ones off. Next part here, you go down, there's a paragraph under number 3. The required notice will be provided as expediently as possible using, and it says insert communication methods. And what I would say is that we don't do the first part of the bracket, but we say existing methods used for providing electronic communications, because depending on which program it is and depending on how we are connected to those students and parents, there are different communication methods that we use. So for EIECSC, for example, they use Parent Square. For long-term care and treatment, it's, I think, emails. And so it's just different. And if we use the second one, I think that covers us.
Mm.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to cross off the first bracket, and we're going to use the part that says existing methods then. All right, scanning on down. Okay, so confidentiality of records. You can see this entire section. I have to look and see where it ends. Yeah, it goes all the way over. So
Yeah.
if you look at this whole thing, it goes on to the next page. It's halfway down page 61 of the packet. That entire section is in brackets. And this sort of falls into the similar type of giving details as that first paragraph does, that it outlines the details that are there. If we didn't have this in, we would still have to abide by the same thing because it's in the law. But it's just how much detail, you always have the option to have things in detail or in less detail in policy. So thoughts about having that stay in or not?
I have a quick comment that is right above that. That's not with that section, but just, so this is unless otherwise prohibited. So it's about a third of the way down the page so the second line says, or to the parent of guardian of a student. I'm pretty sure they meant or.
Yes,
But
I'll
with
make-
a policy this important, it's probably good to have
that's a
those
good
little
good
things.
catch, typo. Yep.
Where's that, Amy? Sorry.
It's on page 60, just
60.
below the part that I crossed out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's right in there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good catch. Thoughts about the bracketed section?
I say keep it in because your team is going to have to develop protocols and procedures, and the more clarity the
Yeah.
policy provides, the better.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And like Miriam has said too, I agree that making it very clear what we are protecting by putting it in there is, I think, a good idea.
That makes sense.
I agree.
I was gonna say, especially when it's in such a new policy, and later on in a year or two, if we feel like, again, with OSBA, it's like, yeah, you can, remove some of the language. We can do that once, but I think because it's such a new policy, more information right now is good. And then later on, we can always review it.
I agree.
Yep. Okay. So I'm crossing those brackets off, and that whole part at the end of page 60 and halfway through page 61 is in there. And then getting to the end of the policy here is the last paragraph is around training. And so you can see this has got some detail. In number 1 and number 2, it outlines that we need to provide training. And then in the brackets, it says upon adoption of this policy and not less than 1 every 2 years, the ESD will provide training to all current staff of 1 hour or more regarding federal and state laws and the ESD's policies related to interacting with federal authorities and responding. The ESD will provide the required training to all new staff within 30 days of beginning employment. I will give just a little bit of commentary on this one. I think this might be detail that could be problematic, primarily because the trainings haven't been determined yet. We have no idea what the required training is going to look like and who's going to help us with that. If we didn't have that bracket in there, it doesn't take away anything in terms of the accountability for us to do training. But I think putting it in there might make it more difficult for us to figure this out. Like maybe there's some really good training that is only 45 minutes long instead of an hour long. That might be challenging. Right. Either way the board wants to go with it, we will make it work. But
do you feel like it's all or nothing bracketed language?
It is all or nothing. That's exactly how I would read it. I thought it was strange that OSBA did this. Mm-hmm. My take is that this is one of those areas where the OSBA legal team is probably like, well, we don't want to overreach in places that are going to have difficulty with adopting this policy. And so it was a little bit of my guess as a give and take, but that's just me speculating about what the legal team was thinking in this case.
I don't know. I read this and I just feel urgency, like the urgency to provide that training within 30 days, especially when we think, like when the school starts, that's usually when you have your new employees coming in. And I just think it's really important that you do it within that month.
Yeah. Other thoughts about this? Leave it in?
I would say leave it in.
I am wondering about that 1 hour, that is the piece
that's the part that as somebody who has been on the implementation side of policy over the years, and I think that's probably where maybe my guess is your brain's going, Lori, as a former principal, is that having that kind of detail can be very challenging. In terms
the 1 hour?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to take the 1 hour out?
That's where I was going with the all or nothing part there, where we provide training.
Like this is something where I could email one of the OSBA policy people and say, can we leave this and scratch out the 1 hour and just say, provide training to all current staff, regarding federal and state laws.
To their respect, they're probably thinking that they want to make sure that agencies are taking time to give a thorough training, not doing one of those classic, like, oh, I gave you the piece of paper.
Here's your 5-minute training. Exactly. Yeah.
So I can see where, I'm going to guess that's where the 1 hour came from.
I'm sure you're exactly right.
But I believe our agency is better than a 5-minute training. Right. Our values and our mission.
Absolutely. We would definitely do it better than that.
Yeah.
I struggle with the 1 hour in a way. And yet at the same time, like I said, if it's something that you as the board are like, no, just leave it in, we'll figure it out. Either way. So do you want me to get information? I'm kind of seeing nods. Okay.
I would love to get that information.
I'm going to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm open. Like we could think about that 1 hour thing, but I think that it really needs to be done within.
And honestly, from my perspective, leaving that in there, if we didn't have the hour, I wouldn't have the same sort of like, how are we going to do this show? Okay, so we made it to the end of that policy. And then we get into the AR, and you can see on the first page of the AR, so the first bracket would just say superintendent. Then we decide, are we talking about contractors and volunteers? And I would say we leave that in. going down through that page, the rest of that page, there's nothing else in brackets.
Another question, B, where it says, that staff should immediately report if they observe any conduct. I'm guessing that as a part of the training, that they will be,
Which
oh,
page are you on?
sorry, it's page 63.
63.
B.
B, staff may not interfere with lawful immigration enforcement actions.
Yeah, but the second,
However, staff, okay, I'm with you now.
yeah,
Okay.
the training will point out things like, what some of those observations
Mhm.
might be like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Help them get the distinction between what is lawful and what is not lawful.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Okay, so nothing else on that first page. We go to the second page, scanning on down. There's nothing on that page that's in brackets. The third page on page
Wait a
6.
minute, there is on
Is there,
60.
did I miss one?
Yeah, down on 2-1.
Two, one. Oh, yeah. No, that's actually not brackets. Those are parentheses. And so that's just a qualifier for
Okay.
order. Yep. But thank you for stopping me there. Okay, if we go to page 65, scanning on down, there weren't really many brackets in the AR, so there's no brackets there. And then we get to the last page, there's some brackets around, the first one is around like ESD sponsored events. So this would be not field trips or athletic events, but one of our only events is like our open house, for example. And so I would say that that is something, that we would leave that in because that's applicable to us, if we were to have other events. And then transportation, we don't actually provide any transportation. School districts provide transportation to EI, ECSE, and to day treatment. And so we don't have any policy that would cover us in transportation. So I would say we don't leave that in there.
What about if there's a field trip, like a preschool field trip?
I suppose if we had in 6 years, I've never seen one of those, but it could happen.
Right. I want to.
So
I don't know. Yeah, but
I'm
yeah,
not
if we
very-
had a field trip, yeah, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
we just
And
have
it
it.
was transportation,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know,
yeah.
I think we should leave that.
You
in.
think so? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
It doesn't hurt by leaving it.
I wanted
Yeah.
to bring the question back up to D at the top, which didn't have brackets, but if the request involves a warrant that appears to be valid, an arrest is made, that the arrest be conducted in a manner that is least disruptive and to the person's well-being. And I would like to add to that we provide information, have information available to inform that person of their constitutional rights.
So that would be something that I would definitely ask the legal team
Right.
because if we start, in general, I wouldn't say that I have any problem with that.
Right.
But as soon as we start, that could sound like legal advice. And that might be an overstep in terms of us saying that. I don't know. I'm just not sure about that.
Yeah, and I just feel like we're on the short end of the stick here when we're doing everything right constitutionally by law, and there's so much that's being done illegally and abusively and just horribly.
Yeah.
Public executions of people. And so to me, if we can resource people who are at a very fearful time, yeah, I would definitely like us to get legal advice on that.
I can ask. That's a great thing. I've got that down.
I did some training where you give out these cards, it's bilingual. I do not wish to speak with you, answer your questions, your constitutional right. So if we could be bold in some way.
Okay.
And have some kind of power to throw back, I would.
Yeah, I will ask that. So, okay. And then volunteers, I think leaving that in makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the last AR is just a form, and there isn't anything I don't think for us to do with this form because the form follows the requirements of the policy. in terms of gathering information. And so I say we use it as is.
I do have a question, just clarification, and we're going back, page 64.
Okay.
Because it says, I'm looking at G,
Okay.
right? And it says at a minimum, the documentation should include the following information if available.
Mm.
And I'm wondering about what is that, like, if available? What if it isn't available? Then
Yeah.
what?
Especially 1 and 2.
Yeah,
So if
This
they
is-
show up but have the judicial whatever,
mhm.
but they're not giving their name or anything like that, then what?
That would probably be where we talked about it earlier, that if they're not showing their faces or they're not giving their names, my inclination would be to call local law enforcement and they work it out.
Okay.
Because as it states in another spot in the AR here, I would not want to put either myself or any of our administrative staff in a position to like physically intervene and say like, you're not doing this,
Yeah.
just because exactly what Bill brought up earlier, that, these can be very dangerous situations,
So, again, going back to the OSBA meeting I attended, someone mentioned a story of something that happened in their district where there was a ICE agent, but they were in an unmarked car on a school property. And one of the admins called the police to ask them if they could come and assist. And the police said they kind of washed their hands of it. They said they were not gonna help.
Yeah.
So I wonder, right?
I
Yeah,
really
then
don't
what's
know.
next?
Yeah, I
Okay.
really don't know. Yeah, I mean, this is where I wish I had more wisdom, for you, but honestly, it's like way outside of my realm of expertise or outside of my wheelhouse to know, I mean,
I guess I'm making a political statement, but at the end
Yeah.
of the day, I cannot believe that we have to sit here
Right.
and do this and ask
Right.
you to do this
Yeah.
and ask any of our coordinators to do this.
Right.
Like I just,
absolutely.
it's
Depressing.
overwhelming. It's just sad.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I appreciate that. Yeah. It is sad.
Imagine how our families feel that they have to go through this.
I
The thing
can't.
that,
I
you
can't
know,
imagine.
Yeah, I mean,
just-
this is the part where, like I said, as an immigrant myself, like, I worry about this. I worry about our communities, our families, our students. This is why I'm an advocate, and I remember it last year in November, I mentioned this to OSBA that we needed something, and I'm so happy that they finally talked to legislature because I made a point during that regional meeting that we had how important it was for our families, because that same day that we met at OSBA, they actually had someone in Albany be taken by ICE.
Wow.
So that's why I feel like this is such an important thing for our families to have some sense of security.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I absolutely can relate as an immigrant myself, right? And Bill, I'm thinking about what you shared too. And I just wonder if there isn't anything else that we can do. I think we're putting measures in place to kind of help protect people, in spite of what's happening. But I wonder about, like what's really the rights of people, I think especially of children, right? Usually I mean, you wouldn't have a child even interviewed by a police officer unless like there was a parent or a guardian or someone present. This just doesn't
Yeah.
feel right.
Well, I look at it through that lens, and I've thought about this, is that early on in my career, and I don't know what law or policy this was, or if it was just the ethos that I was taught as an administrator. But the same thing, like if a police officer showed up to my school where I was an administrator, I would always be like, hang on a second. You're not going to talk to that kid unless I talk to the parent. Unless, and the only caveat was if it was because of child abuse or something like that. And I was like, you need to disclose to me why you want to talk to that kid.
Yeah.
Because I'm there in loco parentis, you know, like I'm there in care of that child. And of course, if it was like, I'm here to interview the child because there's been a child abuse report, and yeah, we're not going to call mom or dad because of that, because they are a suspect or suspected of it. Totally made sense. But there were plenty of times, especially in a middle school settings that I worked, where it's like, okay, all right, Jason, you can sit in. Like, let's call the parent. And if the parent wasn't available, and depending on who the family was, there were times when the family would say, I can't get there right now, but I'm okay with it if Mr. Hay is in it. So yeah, there's things that are like that. It's a very real dynamic. Yeah. Well, I think we made it through, and I have some things that I'm going to check on and can bring back. I think what I would suggest here is that we keep going with things on our agenda. We see where we're at time-wise, and then if the board feels like you know, picking a time when you want to come back together prior to when school starts to do a Zoom meeting, we could pick a time on a night and figure out what night that is, and we could do that. Or if you feel comfortable with us continuing the protocol that we already have in place, that, you know, absent this policy being adopted, we will still do everything we can to protect the children in our care. And we could just do this adoption during the regular September meeting. I'm fine either way.
In terms of protection, though, I mean, does this have more protection than what we currently have in place? Like, what's the difference?
I
here?
would say that it codifies it a little bit more than what we currently have in place. But overall, I would say what we have in place is puts us in a good spot. Like having our coordinators, for example, not being alone. Having my involvement as the chief executive officer of the organization, like things like that, I think put us in a good spot. But I also don't want to speak for the board in terms of what your comfort level is in terms of timeline of adopting this policy. So
I have a question for Christina. I'm wondering if any of this will inform what your new employee onboarding is going to look like, or if any of the other board directors, not board directors, whatever you folks are called that are doing the work. If
the executive team.
Thank you.
Yep.
If you folks have a plan to refer to this at all before school starts.
You want to take that, Christina?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to put you on this, I'm putting you on the spot, but I mean, I'm just trying to think of how we might proceed and what would
So
maybe.
we had this discussion as an executive team, because that was one of the first questions when this policy got put in front of us. For me, I'm about logistics and like, okay, how are we going to come up with training? And we kind of came to an agreement, I think, in our executive team that we wouldn't move forward with figuring out the training until the policy was adopted. Because if there were changes, there was no point in putting the cart before the horse, because we need to know what the policy looks like to inform training. The other piece to this, it was really interesting. This policy came out and literally the next day I'm part of a statewide HR group. And I mean, somebody at like 7:30 in the morning put out to the group, hey, who has training for this? This is coming out. Like, and I mean, nobody had an answer to that. And that was about a week ago. I know we've reached out to OSBA and said, hey, again, 197 districts, 19 ESDs. Could you guys help put together? I mean, they do the safe schools training for us. So like, versus, over 200 entities trying to figure out training.
Yeah.
Independently of each other. So, I mean, as far as new employee orientation, I do not have anything on the agenda around this because it's almost a week away. And I don't have a policy to inform about that. I'm not comfortable training people off of something that's not finalized yet when it comes to policy.
And
I think
adding
that
to
makes
the
perfect sense, and I appreciate your hesitation on that. I think that if people on the board are uncomfortable, it's about getting that person who's at the buzzer prepared for how to respond when there is an ICE agent buzzing to try to get into the building. I think that's where,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And what I would say is that, adding a little bit more to what Christina had shared, I think we're all a little reticent to jump and know what the training is going to look like, because it really ought to have some consistency across the state, and it should probably be a state level entity that is looking at it. And it's possible that we're going to get that. It's very possible that the governor's office is going to direct ODE, for example, to put something together on behalf of school districts in the next month. But I think what we can do, to what you brought up secondarily there, Lori, is that we can go back to our guidance and we can sit down with our office managers and our coordinators and make sure they feel really comfortable about the protocol that we have in place so far. We absolutely can do that without getting into whatever the new training is about the new policy.
And that's really what I was trying to
Yeah.
get to, but it took me
Absolutely.
a while.
And yeah, where you went with that right at the end, I absolutely got what you're putting down, and I think you're right on. Like, we can do that, absent the policy being adopted right now or next week or something like that.
Did OSBA respond to the request about training? Did they ever
Not yet, right?
come back with anything?
Or did they?
So before, I think I might have my first advocacy email I'm going to send as a board member before I leave this room tonight.
Yeah.
Because you can't put this in front of us
Right.
and not be willing, not have some type of resource.
Well, especially that was why the one thing in all of this that honestly, between us right here and this conversation that was really irritating to me, is to put the amount of detail to say, you're going to do an hour-long training.
Yeah.
Great. What's that supposed to look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Because again,
You're absolutely right.
you're not the expert in this. You're not the expert in this area.
Not the authority.
The authority, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, I appreciate that because when I read that, I had thought that there was training already being developed because
One would.
I
hope.
heard this policy coming out.
Yep.
It was about what, a month ago?
Yeah. Oh, well, they've been talking about it since the legislative session was
Yeah.
going on. And there were conversations in the superintendent groups. And just like what Christina described with 220 HR directors, people are like, what? Now what?
Right.
What are you going to do?
Mm.
You know, and yeah, superintendents have been talking about this for a while. And my guess is that there's a whole lot of people in the space that are just like me, that are like, whoa, this is so far outside of my wheelhouse
Yeah.
that just don't want to even think like, what would that look like? You know, even like what was suggested, that was a very reasonable suggestion that Miriam made earlier about like, hey, what people look like, what ICE agents look like in their tactical gear looks different from an Albany police officer than a Lynn County sheriff than a Benton County sheriff or whatever else. I would like to think that I could go, yep, that's that, you know, but it's a little like, I don't know, like when I go back to my Sesame Street days, like one of these things is not like the other. Like, I don't know, you know, how would that training look like? Because I don't necessarily know. And I've had a decent amount of time over the years working with police officers and schools and everything. So I think there's a lot of us that are in this spot of wondering what the next steps are. And there's a lot of noise being made. So that's, you know, I guess my thought to you in terms of a recommendation is, as your employee, I definitely will do what I can to follow through on the direction that you set me. But in terms of a recommendation, my recommendation would be probably to wait until the September board meeting, because as soon as you adopt this, you're going to put a 30-day time clock on me. And I don't know what that training looks like. And my guess is that we're going to know a lot more in the next few weeks, because COSA and OSBA and the governor's office and ODE they're just getting peppered right now with districts saying, come on, what are you going to do? You know, and maybe we'll get some maybe we'll get some resources from them. So yeah, that's my thought.
So if I understood correctly, you're saying to not adopt these right now and wait till the end of September because of the 30-day countdown for you?
What I'm saying is that if we do this during the regular board meeting, it might give us an opportunity to learn more, yes, and get more information from other state level groups and agencies to do this better, is what my thought is.
But that's not the end of the September. Isn't it September 15th or something like that?
Yeah, whenever the board meeting is in September, a month from now.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what I was saying, that for me, I just feel like I want to have something in place before students start arriving to the building.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that's what you and the board determine that you want to do, we could look at the calendar and we could come up with a board meeting very soon. I would need to get some of the questions answered from OSBA on these pieces, and we could come back and we could adopt something sooner. And then we'll do the best we can about what that training looks like.
Yeah.
We'll do all the research that we can, and we'll try to get some things. But I'm just being vulnerable to you as the board right now and saying, I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. And I would love to have some thought partners in this rather than trying to put it together on our own.
Yeah.
Either way.
So what I'm hearing you say, Jason, is that even if the policy was adopted, like right now, it would be a real struggle to put the tools in place to ensure like effective implementation. Is that what you're essentially saying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that we couldn't do it
Right,
and we
right.
couldn't get it done. But just being realistic about like what the efficacy of that would look like. I don't know. It's a bit of and I don't want to dismiss how important this is at all. Like I think this is really important, and the urgency is definitely there. And I agree wholeheartedly with Miriam that if we could have something in place for our families to know about before school starts, wholeheartedly agree with that. And that's like 2 weeks from now, and thinking, about 2 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks from now to get staff trained. It's more like, it would need to happen in the next week and a half. And so, I would be remiss to say that I wouldn't be worried about how that would come together without some collaborators around the state.
How does that change if like the wording around like the times wasn't included in the policy?
In terms of how long the training was?
Like how long the training is and that employees, new employees, well, which at this point would be every employee
Yeah.
trained within 30 days.
I would have to double check, but I'm fairly certain that's in statute around when the training needs to happen, like upon adoption. That's
okay.
that's a
Got it.
clarification that we have to get. I think the thing that was because the
hour.
language that is an absolute is that you will do the training upon adoption. The part that is in there was more about how long the training was. Yeah.
So Jason, in the very front of the policy, that first paragraph where it was the big long bracket.
Yep.
The last sentence of that bracket says, the ESD will provide ongoing training to designated staff to ensure compliance with that policy. And that was a bracket we agreed to.
Yep.
So I do feel like maybe that would cover there
Yes.
is going to be training.
Yep.
Without adding the really specifics about the timing of it. and how long it is.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and even if you go to the end of the policy where it says training and there's the ESD will provide immigration liaison alternate with training as follows, there's that as well. And so I think that last paragraph where it gives the specificity about how long the training is, I don't believe that is needed for us to have a good implementation. It would just be one of those things of, okay, well, what's a 60-minute training versus a 45-minute training? You know, and I don't know the answer to that. Like what would be in there? Yeah.
The other thing I'll just add about training is depending on where you are in the response to this, you're going to get a different level of training than just a staff member who maybe isn't even at one of these sites.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
by saying it's an hour, like that does lock us into like, well, some staff who never
Yeah.
interface.
Person on Rocco's team in the business office on the second floor that has no interaction with the public whatsoever is in a very different spot than the office manager at Clover Ridge.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
And I think I'd be more interested in continuous training than like how long, like,
Yeah.
yeah, a training
Exactly.
really is.
Yeah,
So-
that makes sense to me too.
So I guess I guess I want to hear from the board what everybody's stance is. Like, as you know, I've been very vocal where I am. I would like this to be moved forward as soon as possible. I don't want to wait till after. So I'm okay with meeting in a week or so to once we get information about the language of that direction. So I guess for me, I just want to know what the board thinks since it sounds like I don't know. I don't want to be the only one that is voicing that concern, I guess.
What
I
are
just wanna-
what are your thoughts, Miriam, around the ESD's readiness to provide training? Should we adopt this tonight or should we adopt it in a week?
I would say adopt everything in a week once we have the language, because then it would give us more clarity on what that means once we do talk to OSBA. So that's why I said I'm okay with doing a quick, emergency meeting or work session or whatever we need to call it in a week to be able to pass this. My goal and what I would like to see is to have this implemented, the policy implemented before our students and our families come into our buildings.
I just worry that part of having the policy implemented means that we have a training plan ready to roll out for staff and we don't have access to a training. That's my only worry. I do not disagree for a single second, Miriam, that we need to get this adopted and sooner is better. I just want us to be prepared to train the people like we say we're going to in this policy with a training that is meaningful, that accomplishes what we want it to, and that doesn't put our people on the spot to have to make it up when this is not their area of expertise. I know that might not have answered your questions, but that's what's rattling around in my head right now.
Well, that's why I was wondering, is this something that OSBA or someone in there that can give us a level of direction what that looks like? Because I'm pretty sure when they started recommending this policy, they had to have this in mind, what those trainings look like.
It seems, no.
That would make really good sense.
Yeah.
That really would make good sense. I don't know that that's the case. And I'm not sure that we would, well, I know for sure we wouldn't know that tonight, but
Mhm.
we certainly can get in contact with them right away tomorrow morning and
Mhm.
see what we can find out. But Dina sent them an email, a week and a half ago, and we kind of got the, yeah, we'll think about this because a lot of people are concerned.
Well, I know
Well, I was like,
OSBA
yeah,
well
I
enough
was
to
like,
know
yeah.
that if they had a training ready,
They
they'd
would've
have been
given it.
selling it to us.
Yeah, they would have given it to us already.
So I'm worried that there isn't one.
I am very certain that there is not.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Or they'd have told us, yeah.
Or they would have told us. Yeah,
In,
absolutely.
in terms of where I stand, I would love to see the policy adopted before we start the school year, because I also think that it gives parents, it gives families, a sense of, okay, so this is as safe as it could be, right? I worry though about not being able to implement the policy. So I would be open to, is there a way for us to adopt the policy while being able to give the ESD like whatever time that's needed to figure out the thing, to figure out implementation. But it sounds as though once we adopt it, that the clock starts, right?
Absolutely. Once you adopt it, any of the language in there that has anything about timeframes starts that night.
But we can take out timeframes, right?
You could. But then I would that's another thing I would need to check with OSBA and their legal teams about. Yeah. This is why when I kind of gave my preamble at the beginning that we just have to be really careful about. I would not want you as the board to make an adjustment to the language that puts you at legal liability.
Right.
Because ultimately, the policies that you adopt are on you. And I wouldn't want that to be the case, so that's where if there was something to adjust, I would check with them. I don't know. This has got a lot of complexity to it, and it's hard for me to kind of have a sense for where they're at. I think that my guess is that they scrambled around and did this as quickly as they could based on their own time frame, and all of the iterations and the collaboration that has to happen with writing a policy after legislation happened. And then they threw it out there, and now everybody's going, whoa,
Well, I think they also try to do it before school started too. I mean, I don't want to say they just put it out there just to put it out there. I think they were probably getting, communications from the Color Caucus and other caucuses saying, hey, maybe we do need something before school starts. So I think maybe that's why it feels rushed, is because maybe they did understand and hear voices that something like this, it is impacting our families. And I'm not saying, I don't know. I'm just saying what could have happened. But because I do have to head out, I just want to know what the next steps are so I can be prepared. If this is something that the board has decided to wait in a week or so, or like I said, I put in my opinion, my 2 cents. I am here advocating for our families, for our most vulnerable, marginalized communities. And so I just want to open the floor to hear from the board what are the next steps we want to take, because I do need to head out, unfortunately, but I would like to know.
Yeah. Kind of added to that question that you're asking, Miriam, I'm wondering what can we communicate, to families right now based on what we have in place? Do we have anything on place that would make families feel safe while we figure out like the implementation?
I have the protocol, and tomorrow morning I can resend that out to you, and I could even rewrite it in a communication that would be meant for families. But we could take what we have in place right now and we can send that out to families right now. That would be no problem as we get started with things. I think that my recommendation where we're at right now is to tomorrow morning to reach out to OSBA and get a sense for what information that we can get and how fast. Because I would hate for you to say, all right, well, let's set up a meeting next Tuesday, when that might be completely unrealistic for us to get any clarification about until then. And then we utilize our communication and with Dina and me to see if we can get the information as quickly as possible, get it to you, and then schedule a meeting once we have some information. Because what we can do is I can get you a cleaned up version of what we talked about tonight and get the commentary from OSBA about what flexibility there may or may not be, send that to you and say, okay, here are some possible times when we could meet coming up. Does this time work for everybody? And Dina can check in with all of you and we can schedule a meeting sooner rather than later once we have more information. That would be my recommendation, because right now I don't know that we can figure out much more. We'll just kind of spin. So yeah.
Does that sound good to everyone? So to not make the decision immediately, wait to get a little bit more information from OSBA and then go from there, see if we can set up a meeting. Yes.
Yeah, to answer that part, yes, agree. I'm just curious if you know our component districts, they must be grappling with this too.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of where they're at?
I don't. I've talked to a couple of superintendents about it, and they're kind of in the same spot that we are right now. I also can reach out, and then maybe Dina can reach out to the EAs as well, and we can sort of hit them in two ways, and we can see if we can get a sense for that. Just in talking to a couple of my colleagues, Albany and then there were a couple of smaller districts. They're kind of in the same spot. Like, well, we have this, we're putting it in front of our board. We're going to see where we're at, you know.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the current policy is for how we address immigration and seeing if that will satisfy people to communicate that to parents as a reminder. And if that, what is currently in place is going to help with, again, that 24-year-old who's at the buzzer, you know, that for me, it's the front line and the coordinators and those are the people that I want to have trained up at this point. And the train up is just the stuff that we've been doing, I guess, because we don't really know how to train for that other stuff yet. And
yeah, absolutely. What I can commit to right now is that tomorrow afternoon, our executive team meets. We meet every Wednesday for 3 hours on Wednesday afternoons, and we can put this at the top of our agenda tomorrow. Go through and make sure that we've got clarity around what that is and alignment around what that is. And I can send you something and I'll text you that I sent you something out in an email so that you know that you've got an email to look at tomorrow afternoon. And that can be a starting point, along with we'll start the volley with OSBA by making a phone call and sending an email.
So. Not to add any more to your plate, but I don't know if that would be the right team to just start thinking about, you know, if there is no guidance on training from anyone at the end of the day, does that mean that we can make our own? And while you're not the experts at it, knowing that your board may adopt this policy right away, what might a training look like that you were solely responsible for putting on?
You are basically, that's exactly where my head's at. You know, that if the board adopts this a week from now, we're going to have to come up with something, and we will come up with something. We'll figure that out. And we're we work as a team, and so it certainly will be a team effort to
Thank
do
you.
that. And I would also probably see what some of our districts are planning on doing. I would imagine for some of our districts, if we came up with something, they will probably say, can we have it too?
Yeah.
Because that's what ESDs do, is provide
Yep.
resources to our districts. So I could totally see that happening.
Okay, well, I do have to head out and I'm actually late. But yeah, if you could let me know, or let us know through email, text, whichever, on the next steps. Again, I apologize, I do have to head out. But yeah, I greatly appreciate this conversation and that we're all thinking about our families and our students because that is what we're here for. And so I really great appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
No, Dina was interrupted.
So we were asking about what our districts have done and steps that they have taken in place for this policy. And more than likely, the majority of them, since we meet the third week of the month, a lot of them meet the second week. And so most of them probably already have their packets already published and probably don't even have a first read for September. I mean, August, sorry, for August. So
But we'll reach out to them and we'll ask and see. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. You ready to continue on?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so if we go on here, there's a few other policies that are related to some financial things that we are getting in alignment with current law. And so I'm just going to run through these quickly. So if you look at policy DJ around district purchasing, the big thing here that changes is the authorization amount from 150 to 250,000. This changed in the law primarily because if you think about inflation, everything has gotten more expensive, and it's been 150,000 for the last decade or so.
Elevators.
Yeah, elevators. Yeah, it could be an elevator, it could be something else, but yeah. So so that's that. It does just change. We've got to change the language. Like Rocco's title is not chief financial officer, but it's executive financial officer. And then the section about the chief financial officer will review bills due. That is not something that is done in practice because we eliminated it based on purchase orders being approved by me or the designee. So that's that one. Any questions about that? policy?
Not questions, but
Okay.
just an observation.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the gifts, that it remains $50 in
That
spite of
Mhm.
inflation.
It does. And that is you're absolutely right. There would be feedback for the Public Ethics, Oregon Ethics Commission. Yes. Too true, too true. It is interesting how, we've had conversations. I mean, even we were talking about, we do things, if somebody like their spouse passes away, and we've had practices where the Sunshine Committee, and it's like, okay, we'll spend up to $35 for flowers. Well, you
Right.
can't send flowers for 35
Right.
bucks unless you're going to send two,
Right.
like here's your 2 or 3 flowers,
Right.
so yeah, it's funny how that is. Okay, so going to the next one, page 73, this is about the bank cards, and this just codifies some information regarding the bank cards. So you can see there is one thing, Lori pointed this out earlier. She said, did we mean to cross out the 1,000 that's in green? No, excuse me, I've been talking too much. The 1,000 should be in there. Purchase of supplies not to exceed 1,000 with the credit card. And then the other part, payments related to SPSS programs. So that's the strategic partnerships for student success and purchase for equipment and whatnot. And then you can look at, there's just a different, when it comes to submitting requisitions, if we're using a bank card, there isn't a requisition in the same way. So this is just tightening up practices. And then rather than 3 days, it's 10 days, 10 calendar days of receiving the bill when it comes to the bank cards. And that's just how the bank cards work. Like if we're going to use a credit card, there's a certain way that how they work. Rocco, anything I'm missing off of that?
Nope, that got it.
Okay, all right. Any questions on that one? Okay. Payroll. This is related to payroll law and Oregon paid leave. And so you can just see there's some things in here about rather than the non-voluntary costs of, but legally mandated deductions. And that follows the language of the law better and decreed by a court. And then legally mandated deductions in the last part that also includes Oregon paid leave or any other state tax. So that just makes sure that we have in our policy, which was outdated. You can see the last time it was adopted was in 2007. There are different practices in place. And then the last policy is around salary advancements. We don't get very many of these, but we have had some circumstances primarily in this last year where this was greatly abused. And it turns into a very difficult thing where there are advances being asked for so often that we end up having a harder time where somebody doesn't even have a paycheck by the time they get the next paycheck. And then they're asking for an advance for the next paycheck. And it's just this catch-22 of like, okay, there's only so many times this really should happen. It should be about an emergency, not necessarily because you want to get paid every week or every other week instead of monthly. And so that's something that we have for that. Questions about the last two? It's really just getting our policies in alignment with what the practice should be. Okay, so what I have heard, I've gotten a, for the most part with all these policies, you will see a whole bunch of these come back in consent agenda. And then the 2 or the 3 related to ICE will come back separately. So with that, I am done with policies.
Okay, and we are now on to business office matters.
All right, I will try and keep this efficient. Let's go to page 79 and just take a look very quickly. We took in a little more, about $2.2 million this month. The overwhelming majority with is the state school fund. A note to those of you who haven't seen this very often on here, July is a double month. A way long time ago, ODE ran out of money, didn't make a June payment and said, we'll catch you in July. And they've been holding that forward. So every year, every district makes a one-time loan to ODE, which they pay back in July. Got to know the history.
Isn't that great? Yeah, it is great.
All right, looking at expenditures, we spent about $1.6 million this month. What you'll see on the expenditures, I noted the 2 abnormal ones that we had. We had $290,000 going out for our insurance payment on there. You do see the one transfer going out, $175,000. That is the first portion of us transferring the leftover OAESD funds to Multnomah ESD. Payroll is low for the month because licensed staff are not on, so we don't record the payroll in the month. And let's just keep firing along on here. Next page, looking at cash balance, we are sitting at about $18.5 million at the end of the month, which is actually really, really strong because we have a ton of cash coming in imminently. So 2 weeks ago, my team finished submissions on $11.9 million of grant reimbursements, 8.9 million of which actually belongs to last year. So we'll report it in last year, 3 million to this year. It does mean we're about to get a really big cash influx coming in. And that's the times of the year where what we show in revenue expense doesn't exactly match what's going on in the bank account because so much of it relates to a prior period. And other than that, we'll just say interest rates holding at 4% and nobody knows how.
That's really true. Nobody knows how. It's amazing.
Any questions anybody has on the financials?
So for licensed staff, so they are paid, how does that work? So they're paid in the end of June?
So they
for-
receive, the way that we do ours, it's a triple check that goes out in June, which covers July and August. Technically,
Okay.
it is the July and August from the previous year that you're being paid for. But that is how the payments equalize out.
Okay, got
And
it.
that's why we have such high payroll costs in June.
Correct, because we record a triple payment, we show it on a cash basis rather than an accrual basis.
Okay,
And-
okay.
And Rocco, on the moving average cash balance over the past 2 Julys, it's trending up. So is that just reflecting kind of the way we cushion over a growing budget?
It is, no, it's more to do with the timeliness of payments. The prior year payments were coming in very, very late. So we had a lot of cash out the door waiting for grants to be reimbursed. And that had a lot to do with the grants being the amounts not getting approved until late into the year. In the current year and the way that we're operating, we have those grant amounts, so we're able to submit them, but we also are allowed to do pre-draws on the 2 largest grants. So the average cash balance is moving up because we're holding the cash for a longer period of time.
That makes sense.
It's a boon for us, yeah.
No thanks to it.
Exactly.
They still owe us for the loan that we make to them every year.
It's so funny when you get into these roles and you ask the question like, why do we do that? And then you find out the weird historical thing and okay, you know. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rocco. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to superintendent report.
Okay, so the next thing that I have here is the customer satisfaction survey, and I just have some information to share with you. And so I'm going to share my screen. This is something that we had queued up for July and we didn't get a chance to do. So let me. No, I have to get to the right spot. Okay, so here we go. In your packet on pages 84 and 85 is a, and this was what you had in your packet during the July meeting, was an executive summary of some information that we gathered with the customer satisfaction survey. But I just wanted to take a few minutes. I just have a handful of slides here that I think are really good for you to know. I'm sharing this information, or I shared this information already with Leadership Council, with our administrators. I also am going to share this information with our superintendent, our visa superintendent group. And so really good news from the standpoint of, you know, we have a lot more survey respondents than we ever had before. I think it's about 5 times more than we had the last time we did a satisfaction survey. I'm still not terribly happy to say that, oh, we only had 153 respondents, but that was 5 times more. I think that we actually can get a lot more than that when you think about how many staff and how many people that we work with, both in our region of 12 districts, but also another 40, 50, about 50 districts outside of our region as well. So we're going to continue working on outreach around this. But overall, we did this asked the net promoter score, and that's like how much a district would say they would promote us as a to other customers. But overall, people said that they were 88% of the respondents said they were either satisfied or very satisfied with the service we provide, which that's really quite good.
Who gets the survey?
We sent it out to superintendents, to EAs, to SPED directors, curriculum directors, principals, like any of the lists that we had, we sent it out to them. Plus
Teachers?
Yep, to teachers. Now, most of the teachers that reply that even know about us are actually not regular ed teachers, they're special ed teachers. Yeah, you know, but yeah, we sent it out to them. Honestly, well, it went out to thousands of people. And yeah, so it's hard to get people to respond to surveys, even though this survey was an adapted survey, so that once they selected what role they had, they only got those set of questions. So, you know, like you could actually take the survey in about 5 minutes. And so we'll just keep working on what that looks like. But what we asked in this is about strengthening partnerships, improving service, ensuring alignment with district needs, and then being able to celebrate and identify what's working well and strengths here. I think this is really interesting. You know, in terms of the development of it, people are really afraid of surveys, and for good reason, because sometimes surveys are, especially when it comes to about staff, there are some entities that will use it as a gotcha, like I put here, will use it as a compliance exercise, and you know, really like kind of beat staff up for the survey results, and that is not how we want to use it. I've been in organizations that have done that before, and I wouldn't want that done to me, and I wouldn't do that to anybody else. And so it's about continuous improvement. Who we heard from, you can see these are the exact numbers of those groups. Now those numbers don't add up to 153 because I just gave you like some of the big chunks of people that are there. But 63% of the people that responded either interact with us daily or weekly, which is pretty interesting. We had really strong results with one clear focus area. So one thing that was said over and over is our staff, our LBL strongest asset. We consistently got praise around specific staff going above and beyond their roles. And the criticism that we got, and there was criticism in there, but it was almost always about a process or a procedure. It was not about staff. And then the only group that had the most consistently critical feedback was actually the business directors. And interestingly enough, it was about a number of business directors that are not in our region and that were mostly upset. Now, I mean, I don't want to discount, and this is what we talked about this in terms of like, we need to really listen to the results. And I don't want to discount the results, but it was interesting to see that as we did our Infinite Visions rollover to the cloud, and that group didn't want to pay for a help desk any longer, we got criticized for not providing a help desk anymore. And so it's a little like, well, you aren't paying for a help desk, and you know, but that was where some of the criticism came, which was kind of interesting. So you can see here satisfaction by segment, that in terms of either satisfied or very satisfied, principals, assistant principals, like 95% of them were in that spot. SPED teachers, synergy tech staff, technology directors, other people that captured like curriculum directors and some of the other folks. And really the only group that kind of downgraded us more were the business directors. And there were 9 of them that made a comment. What's working? We're over and over, people talked about our collaboration and partnership. I really loved this quote. These are quotes from staff are seen as thought partners, not just service providers. They're available, they're expert, and they're easy to reach. We're responsive, there's staff expertise, people going above and beyond. This quote at the bottom, everyone I've worked with has gone out of their way to be helpful, even if it seems outside their scope. I've never seen a staff member turn someone away. If we don't have a direct solution, staff do everything they can to supply an alternative. This is something that we've been very purposeful about wanting people to do. Like, don't just say,
I don't know.
not my department. Good luck. But it's like, no, let's help you find the person that can help you. So that was cool to see that reflected. The next part here just talks about, you know, again, getting into that. This is LBL really, and the way this came out in the survey, is a roster of trusted individuals. There were places for people to write feedback, like where they typed in their own feedback throughout the survey. And there were 80 staff members that were named with positive feedback. There were 332 positive mentions, and there were 118 kudos total. Where there's like there were more than 118. There were 118 people that received kudos. This is the interesting part between the 118 and the 80 is that people were giving kudos to staff, but they were giving kudos to some of their own staff because they didn't know they were ESD staff or not. 80 of them were our staff. So I thought that was kind of cool and interesting. But one thing that we did, and so going into the next to focus here, we talked about some SPED evaluation timeliness, making sure we've got good communication around technology updates, and then thinking about the business service responsiveness. But where I wanted to go next, let's see, I have to click ahead. Nope, I'll just have to talk about it. I realized I took that slide out, but related to the staff members that were named, I did a couple of things right away with these survey results after we received the results. First of all, I personally sent an email to every one of those 80 staff members, thanking them, let them know that they were called out. There were a number of people that had actually multiple call outs, and I actually said, like, you were mentioned 12 times. The top person, which I thought was pretty cool, was mentioned 21 times. I'll just share it. That was Kayla, our E-rate director. People love Kayla. She does a great job, and she got mentioned 21 times by different people, which is awesome. So I wrote them emails thanking them. So that was one thing I did. And then the other thing that we did later in the survey, and this isn't related to this slide, but I'll just kind of keep going then and move off of this because of time here, is that we also had people that were willing to be contacted to provide additional information. So there were 35 people that were willing to be contacted. And so they received an email from me as well, connecting them to have Dina help them shuttle, connect with people. We haven't heard from a lot of people yet, just because people are starting the school year and there's busyness with that. But we'll reach back out because we want to get more feedback from folks. This is a slide I just left in just to point out when we did this activity during our admin retreat, we actually had our administrators do a small group activity to talk about actionable items that we should consider in thinking about that. So that was just a way that we want people to know that we're using this data. This is not just send the survey out and go, oh, that was great, and moving on. So you'll see more about this. This is the last slide that I have that I did mention this. There were 35 people that had responded. Actually, 53 people volunteered as a follow-up conversation. And I'll have to figure out how to ask the question better, I guess, or get compliance. But 53 people said, yes, I'm willing to provide the information. And then when it says, please enter your name and your email so we know who you are, some people didn't do that. So only 35 people entered their name and email. So there were some people that I have no way to contact them because I don't know, because it wasn't an anonymous survey. So anyway, that was the satisfaction survey, and you can look on pages 84 and 85, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. But really, really cool stuff to see. There's things for us to learn, but it was very positive overall.
It doesn't have to be tonight, but I do hope we can dive a little bit more into some of this, even if it's over the course of the year. Because
I would like that.
Yeah, I think it's an incredibly
during the
important.
retreat's a great. That we'd have some time for that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I do have some questions around you know, like some of the special ed timelines, but.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll make some time to do that. And this is where I feel bad that we have some really deep conversations that were really necessary and that's kind of gets kicked, but it is important. It probably falls into that category sometimes with the Eisenhower quadrant of it's important, but not urgent. And so sometimes we don't focus on it. So.
Mhm.
The next one I have on the list is the EIECSE facilities update. Just want to let you know, we have moved into the Letitia Carson space. People are getting set up. We paid staff to come in early and be able to unpack and do some of that. So that's been really helpful in terms of the common spaces. And then people are getting some extra time to be able to get things set up here. And so that's all happening. Our partners that are renting from us as like a sub lessee are also working on moving in. In fact, one of them I think held a training with 100 of their staff in the cafeteria today, and that we have furniture coming. However, we had furniture around to make it work for them now, and I think Max was out there getting tech set up for them today.
Quite a few people.
Was the parking lot full? Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. So big stuff with that, but that I think it's going pretty well. Just knowing the stress level, like I really feel for the staff and the administrator that's out there, the tech people that are doing, like, this is where if you think about any type of moving experience,
Oh,
we have
yeah.
our personal moving, it's terrible, like it's terrible to move. And so yeah, moving in a space it's stressful. And so I'm just looking forward to when they're about a month in where they can go, okay, we're here, but we are checking in regularly. Lisa McConnell has basically been out there. She's our facilities coordinator, been out there almost every day, making sure that people are cared for. And that's kind of the big thing. I'll do one other quick one and then I'll finish up with what's in the packet. Leadership Council retreat. I just put this on here because I just wanted to share with you. We had a fantastic Leadership Council retreat. I was super excited about the feeling of it. There were good vibes going with staff. We have over the course of the last couple of years have created more inclusivity with our leadership team. It's not just the education team, which has been the case. So like Max is a part of our leadership council as a network leader, network director. I have to get the right thing. And so we've got all of the leaders in our organization that are coming together and learning together and working together. And it feels really good to have that. So that's great. And then the last thing, and this is really for your consideration, I think just like the board operating agreement that you worked with Vince on, I think that it is worth taking some time over the course of a few meetings to look at language that is something that we can have as an operating agreement between the board and me. Superintendent board operating agreements differ depending on what district you're in and what they look like. In the past, our operating agreements have just been a couple of documents that have a few things about communication and whatnot. And because the board did such a great job of creating a much more robust operating agreement document, I thought that it would actually be really great to have a companion document that talked about how we interact and how things are set up so that we can have good communication. And it's one of those things, just like with the board operating agreement, you don't necessarily need it when you're in good times. It's set up so that you have good protocols if things go sideways on us, and we can say, okay, well, let's go back and let's look at, you know, how we interact with each other, how do we communicate and everything else. So this is just a draft from me that I took what you had and I took what we used to have and I did some combining and mashing together. I shared it with Amy and Miriam, got some feedback from them, did some revision. And so this is actually the second revision that's in front of you now. And it's getting late. And so I would say, let's come back to this at the next meeting and we can, you know, we could even put it earlier in the agenda so that we can have some conversation around it. And I would love to have an agreement in place for us at some point.
Just one thought.
Yeah.
Does this need to be updated?
Oh, yes,
Appendix A.
150,000,
Exactly.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Only if you approve it in the next.
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
Once that
Exactly. Too true. Too true. Yep.
That's true.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.
I have an observation.
Oh,
Yes, please share.
Where Denise is sitting does not show up on the camera hardly at all. Like I didn't even know she was
Oh.
there for a lot of the meeting. So I'm not sure, just so you know that
Okay,
there's,
that's good to know.
were you able to hear me though?
yeah,
When I
yeah,
spoke?
yeah. It was
Okay.
just that, like, you just spoke, and I think I have it on where it's supposed to be now it's showing you, but it just hasn't been showing you much. And I just thought whatever
Okay.
that spot is, I don't know.
It's got to be that spot because I did rewatch a number of sections of our last board meeting on YouTube between the last board meeting and now, and it actually didn't show Denise sitting because I think you were sitting here last time as well. So there might be a funkiness of that spot. So we can check in that. Okay, that's great. Let me ask you this, Lori, in terms of can you hear us a lot better with the new microphones?
I can hear once people remembered to speak, I heard almost everyone. Bill, you've just got such a soft voice. It's sometimes challenging to hear you, but everyone, I heard the whole meeting. It was great.
That's awesome. Very good. It's better.
Great to hear. Thank you, Lori. Okay, important dates. Thursday, August 27th. I believe that's next Thursday. 8 to 4 p.m. is the new staff orientation. Did you I know we were invited to that. Was there a specific time? Okay. Yeah, it's just nice for us. I think
It's
I will
great
be
if you can
unable,
come.
unfortunately, because I will be camping, but I've gone to it at least once and it's just a nice time to touch base with new staff and let people know that we care about what they're doing. Tuesday,
Can
September.
I make a comment about that? If possible, if y'all can figure out that date sooner, like I don't know, maybe you've known it for a long time, but about 4 months ago, I scheduled family to visit during that time. But if I
Okay.
know in advance, I'm happy to set aside that day because I really would like to attend.
Okay,
So
that's really good feedback, Lori, because we do actually know that date. So that just tells me that we just need to make sure that you all are aware of that date way earlier because yeah, we build a calendar. We'll probably be building the calendar out in January
Yeah.
for next year.
I'm planning to come.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. All right. And then Tuesday, September 15th, we've already talked about this. That's our next regular board meeting. Tuesday, October 20th is our October board meeting. And then November 12th through 14th is the OSBA annual convention in Portland. And then does anyone have suggestions for future agenda items that you'd like
just
to see?
to reiterate the one that I mentioned the last time.
Yeah.
yes.
You got that on the list. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
And can I add?
Go ahead. Time.
A conversation about board member evaluations. I don't know if that's something that we do.
We can, and actually what I can do is get some information from OSBA. They have a tool that we can use for
okay.
that. So I'll bring something back. My suggestion to the board would be to do something like that during the retreat.
Okay.
There'll be some more time to dig into it.
do have, I think it's every other year that we.
We kind of were doing it every other year, so this would be the year to do it, because I don't think we did it last year, so yeah, if I remember right.
Delve into that a little bit more
Yeah.
in detail. All right, thanks everyone, appreciate your time. We will adjourn at 8:29. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful.
Bye.